All right, so before I get started, I have to wax philosophical for a moment. This hotel has a really big meaning to me, and probably to a lot of some of you guys. Depends on your age. But if you were a DE Dr. Sid devotee like I was, then, yeah, exactly. I feel healthy. I feel happy. I feel terrific, right? So, if you were that during that era when Dr. Sid was speaking at DE, and all the other amazing greats like Dr. Santo, Dr. Sigafus, Dr. Grassam, Dr. Satilli, right? So you remember all those. So, like, my wife and I were just, kind of talking about this. We used to, there was this vibration that, I don't know if you guys felt this vibration that happened. So we would pull up and we were like, oh, this is going to be so great. And then we would walk in and we go up the escalator and it was like, and then you open up to where the DE vendors were and stuff. And I was just like, I can't wait to listen to Dr. Sid. So being in this hotel is really super cool to think about those memories of Sid and Santo and Sigafus and Satilli and all those amazing speakers that I miss dearly because they were the people who really took me down the path to be able to talk to you guys today. So I honor Dr. Sid and all those other people from that amazing early DE era. So thanks for listening. So anyway, today my goal is in an hour. This is not working. My goal is, hello. Not working. Is there another way to do this? Try it again. There we go. Good. So my goal today in an hour, this is really a several-hour talk that I'm going to have to, I'm from New York, so I can compress things very, very quickly. So I'm going to take a 4-hour talk and put it into an hour. But this is probably one of the most important things that I have learned in recent history, probably ranking up as close to importance like the polyvagal theory was when I first learned that about 15 years or so ago. And it's the concept of prediction and why prediction is important in the pediatric brain, but especially in children with autism, which is my specialty. So the first thing I want to talk about, just kind of to pre-frame it though, is what is interoception? So interoception, when we were all in school, and I remember when I was in high school and stuff, we learned that there's 5 senses, right? You got 5 senses. You got, vision and taste and touch and smell, right? Hearing, blah, 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 right? And then as time went on, we started learning chiropractic school. Well, there's a few more senses, right? There's proprioception, vestibular, stuff like that. But there's another sense, there's a bunch of other senses, but there's another sense that's really important. It's called interoception. And interoception is how can you tell what's happening inside your body? Now, for you and me, if we're hungry, that's pretty easy. I'm hungry, I get the hunger feelings, whatever, and I guess I'm hungry, right? And you and me say, I get this feeling, I think I better go to the bathroom. Well, then we go to the bathroom. But what happens if you don't have those feelings? Right? We take those feelings for granted. But what happens if you don't have those feelings? See, that's what interoception does. Interoception is what allows us to understand our body. We notice our body signals, we connect those signals to what they mean, right? So we have this feeling in our tummy, and we say, that must be the hungry feeling, right? And then we regulate the body signal. So we say, okay, well, I'm not done till 1 o'clock in the office, and it's 11 o'clock and my stomach is rumbling. Too bad, right? You're just going to have to wait, right? But that's just but we can do that. Right, we have that ability to process and to regulate and to decide what to do with it. And this is mostly coming from the insula, which is deep within the brain, in the middle part of the brain. So the insula interprets internal body signals. It kind of tells you what this is and what it means. It helps interpret what these things are. So we take this for granted. But now, Tanner, if you could play the video, please. This is a good example of a lack of interoception. So here it comes. So watch this child.
Namaste.
Now he's not tapping his head. You can hear that. Can you hear that? He's not. You can stop it. That gives Tanner. He's not like tapping his head a little bit, right? That's pretty significant, right? And this is not unusual in kids with autism because they don't feel internal sensations. They don't get hunger. They don't get, I have to go to the bathroom. And they don't feel pain the way you and I would. Like if you and I would do this, like we would get headaches, right? It would feel horrible, right? These kids don't feel that kind of stuff. That's important to understand because what is your office like? What does your office make your kids like this do? Are they happy in that office or not? For example, like this room is a nightmare for a child on the spectrum. Why is that? Yeah, these super bright lights. I mean, I love it, right? Great to take notes in and stuff like that, but very, very bright lights. And if you listen, they make a noise, right? So they hear this, and the external stuff is so overpowering with kiddos with the spectrum that it overpowers the internal. So they pay more attention like this than they pay attention to inside. So that's why he's able to do this. All right, let's go to the next slide, please. Hello? There we go, almost. Okay, so you can see that it has been studied that the insula has major dysfunction in children with autism. So it's not just something that we're noticing, it's something that's physically, you can see on an fMRI. So people with autism have changes to their interoceptive awareness. They don't get the things going on inside the bodies the way you and I might. And there's a really great book that talks about this. It's called Autism and the Predictive Brain. And what this author mentions is because of the many sensory threats that exist in the outside world, interoception is simply not at the top of the brain's to-do list. Right? So it's just like, that's not important, right? Hunger, peeing, all that is not important. What's important is like this horrible loud noise from the air conditioning and from the projectors and from the fluorescent lights. That's what's important, right? Even though it's not important, but it is. But you see, like if I didn't tell you to think about the projector noise and the air conditioning noise and the fluorescent light noise and how bright it was, you would never even thought it because you can subtract. You and I have the ability to subtract, but a child, especially a more significantly affected child on the spectrum, cannot subtract. So what we can push out like this becomes their focus. So this is how the brains of a child with autism versus without autism are kind of thinking and what they're kind of perceiving. So a non-autistic brain can look at this and look at the big picture. They think about details. I'm not going to go over this because we don't really have enough time, but this is a great slide that really explains the differences. You need to understand interoception to understand prediction because interoception is internal and prediction is also internal. So we kind of put those two things together. So, by the way, if you're interested in reading some really great books about this, prediction with the human experiences, these two books are amazing by Dr. Andy Clark. He is a scientist, neuroscientist out of England. Surfing Uncertainty and The Experience Machine are two amazing books to read about this. They're both relatively recent books. And what they talk about, like just the bottom line is the old view of prediction, the old view of how we used to think is like a stimulus comes in and then you kind of process it and process it and process it some more, and that's like the old kind of thing. Just like, so I look like this and I see you guys out there and I say, okay, I'm speaking in an audience and so this is what I have to do, and that's the old way of thinking. The new way of thinking says that there's stimulus, but there's already sort of this predictive thing going on in our brains to say, what's happening here? Is this the way it's supposed to be happening? Is this room look the way it's supposed to look? And it's going to match my prediction. So my prediction looks like this room has this many people in it, and it matches it, so that kind of makes sense. The old concept is the sensory info comes in, goes to higher and higher levels for interpretation, and then actions result. The new way to look at it is you're always saying, is this the right thing or is this not? Does this make sense or does this not? All based upon prediction. And it's something that's learned over time. So the new concept, according to Dr. Clark, is that the way prediction works is a hierarchical thing. It's not localized to a single brain region. It uses something called bidirectional cortical processing to minimize prediction error. So we're trying to say, does this all fit? Does this make sense? And this goes very well with the polyvagal theory, because if you remember, especially my talks about the polyvagal theory, when we talk about polyvagal theory, what we're looking at is we're thinking about safety. Right? Like we all know the vagus nerve is supposed to do rest and digest. Yes, that's easy stuff to remember. But what the vagus nerve really does, aside from rest and digest, is social engagement. And the way it determines if this is a good social engagement situation is the vagus nerve is like a radar like this saying, am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? So that goes hand in hand with prediction, right? Because you have to predict, is this a safe room? Is this still a safe room? Is this still a safe room? So another great book I was reading to prepare for this was from Anil Seth, and he said, we never experience sensory signals themselves, we only experience interpretations of them. So, and here's a perfect example of prediction errors. We all have our smartwatches, right? We all have our cell phones, right? How many times did you think that your smartwatch buzzed on your wrist and you look at it and nothing happened? How many times do you say, did I just get a text? Did I just get a text? No, there's nothing there. How many times does that happen? That's called a prediction error. That's called a prediction error. So we are so conditioned to these things buzzing on our wrists and buzzing in our pockets or whatever that we're constantly looking and looking and looking. And at least once a day, I'm looking at my watch or looking at my phone, and I thought I felt something and it wasn't there. And I see all you guys shaking your heads, so you all feel the same way. So we all experience these prediction errors. But when we look at a picture like this says here, looking at this scene, I see a gray car, street, a brown building, etc. The truth is, I'm not seeing any of those things. What I'm really seeing is a stream of neural impulses. We're not really seeing a car and a building. We're really seeing a whole bunch of dots and dashes and zeros and ones in computer language. But our brain is able to take those little impulses and make it into something. Here's another video. Tanner, sorry, there's another video. Can you play this video, please? Hello? I'm not sure. Another video, sorry. I don't know if it's embedded, don't worry about it. I forgot about this one. All right. Anyway, so don't worry about it. The way that this works is this. If you couldn't predict, there's zero possibility you could play tennis. There's zero possibility. And what this was going to show is there's some of this amazing back and forth. Like you see this guy at 100 mile an hour serve, boosh, like this. And this guy's able to go bam, like this. There's no way that your eyes and your motor system could predict that on itself, right? There's got to be like, you're looking like this and you say, okay, this guy's holding the racket this way and he's throwing the ball up this way, so it's probably coming over here, right? And you're able to go over here before, like, the guy's already like this and you're already moving like this because you already know where it's going, right? That's prediction. That's how our brain works. Now, we don't have that in infancy. In infancy, we have to develop this, right? But as we get older and we start understanding things and piecing things together, now we can develop prediction. But here's the situation. Just like with a kiddo who's banging his head, what happens if we don't understand prediction? What happens if our brain don't learn prediction? Then we live in an unpredictable world. How would you feel about that? How would you feel that every time you're driving down the road, you wouldn't know if something was going to swerve into you every other second? You have to, you're always being on defensive constantly like this, right? How would you know if something was always coming after you, you wouldn't know what to do, right? So that's how I want you to reframe your thoughts about children on the spectrum, especially more the autism level 3 kiddos, as they call them now, the more significantly affected kiddos. I want you to reframe it to think that they don't understand prediction, so you have to make, in your offices, a very predictable experience. A very predictable experience, because that's what helps them understand and feel calm in your presence. So this is what your retinas, rods, and cones appear like when you're looking at something. There's this old saying, I don't know if you remember this when you guys were in school, because I remember hearing about this, that what happens is your retina actually sees everything upside down. No, it does not. It does not look like this in your eye. You don't have this upside down image in your eye that happens. You have all these little dots and dashes and pieces of information putting in here. Now, yes, it may turn things upside down initially within our brain, but you don't look at I'm looking at you, and if you looked at my eye right now, you wouldn't see you upside down, right? That's not exactly how it works. It's a cute theory and a nice way to explain something, but it's not really how it is. So what is this a picture of? Anybody can tell? You've seen this before. Really? All right, anybody else see a frog here? That's really good. Really? Okay, so about 3 or 4 of you. That's impressive. I didn't expect that. This is a frog. This is called a Mooney. It's called the Mooney diagram from the professor who came up with this. But now, once you see this, you can't unsee this, right? So if I just went back like this and showed you, you see, because you all see the frog, right? It all makes sense. But that's because I told you what to predict. I gave you the things to predict, and now we can go back like this, and now you can see it, right? But you learned that. But what happens if you can't? See, that's what I'm trying to illustrate to you guys. What happens if you cannot learn that? See, we have this ability called mind reading, right? And I'm not talking about I can tell what you're thinking, right? I'm not talking about that. In other words, if this was we're at the Braves Stadium a couple of 100 yards from here, and the national anthem starts, and they say, "Oh, say can you?" And if you're born in the United States, what's the next word? Because you know that. That's called mind reading, right? At least scientifically, that's what they call mind reading. But a lot of kids on the spectrum, they're what we call mind blind. They're mind blind. You say, "Oh, say can you?" And they're like, "I don't know what the next word is," right? Even though they may have heard it a million times, but they don't have that predictive ability the way we do. So, all right, here's the next audio, Tanner. So we can play this, please. So listen to this. This is a really cool thing that Dr. Clark was talking about in his books. Thank you so much. Okay, anybody understand that? What was that? What is this, some garbled stuff?
The man read the newspaper at lunchtime.
Can you all hear that now? Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? The man read the newspaper at lunchtime. Thank you so much, Tanner. The man, we can turn it off now. Thank you. The man read the newspaper at lunchtime. When you first heard that, squeaky, 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 you're like, what? Right? But then you hear it, because I taught you a prediction, and now you get it. Right? Now you can hear the squeaky, 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 and know that the person is saying, the man read the newspaper at lunchtime. Right? Because of our amazing predictive ability. But once again, going back to those kiddos on the spectrum, they don't have the same ability to do that. Right? And that's why we need to make a very different process for them in our offices. All right, let's go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So once you understand the context, then prediction is easier. Because what we're constantly doing is, that was an error. You heard that was squeaky, squeak, squeak, squeaky, squeaky, squeak, and that was an error. Like, what? Right? So your prediction, you're listening to the words, you're trying to figure out what the words are. You can't figure out the words, but then I have to give you the sequence. I have to give you the code. And once I give you the code, then you can get it. Right? So prediction error, right? Your body, I give you the code, and now you can get it. But that's the sequence. That's how we work every single day in all our moments. So here's a view from my office. Here's a view the next day. That's a prediction error, right? Have you ever done this before? You drive up to the same thing, you're like, what? Right? What? This is not the normal view, right? So you and I just look at this, a tree fell, right? There was a bad storm last night, and we can extrapolate from our prediction error. So this is what it should look like. This is what it looks like. Prediction error. Okay, wait. It was a big storm last night. The tree must have fallen. I should call up the landlords and have them be cleaned up because they may not know about it. But what happens if you are on the spectrum and you're like, did I do this? What does this mean? Is this going to happen to every tree? Do I hear a funny noise? Is that supposed to be there? Right? You start asking these questions that are skewing you away from what's really going on and what happened. Because the right question is, okay, was there a storm last night? Yes. Okay, so that's why the tree fell. So what should I do? I should go to the landlord and have them remove this to keep everybody safe, right? But what happens if your mind goes in this direction? So With autism, they have hyper-processing of incoming data, which creates prediction errors, and they have decreased interoception. So imagine that those two pieces are compounding to make more and more prediction errors. So have you ever seen, well, I see this all the time. Have you ever seen a child on the spectrum who gets overwhelmed? And what are you going to see them do? They'll either A, hit their heads like you saw that little boy doing when they're overwhelmed, right? They don't know what to do, and that's their way of calming themselves. Even though you say, oh, how would hitting your head calm yourself? But I can predict that, right? I can predict when I do this, right? This is the motion, and this is, now they may not feel pain the way you and I feel it, but they can feel something, and that makes a prediction, right? Or a kid goes into some kind of a tantrum, and a lot of times, especially kids on the spectrum, they go into tantrums, there's a very specific sort of tantrum pattern that they follow, and parents will say, it's going to be a 20-minute tantrum. Once it starts, it's 20 minutes, they do this, and that's just what happens. And that's what they do. They do it to calm themselves. They're overwhelmed, and they go into a tantrum, or they'll hit their head or something like that. Because, see, you and I can be over here, we can learn, we perform, maybe be confused a little bit, but their bandwidth here is meltdown or overload. That's what happens when they go into this. That's why we need to create, your office needs to be very predictable, and your adjustments need to be very predictable. Very predictable, right? This is one thing that I talk about in my ICPA seminar, because I talk about how to take care of these kiddos, this is why it's so important when we take care of these kiddos that we need to have very gentle techniques, especially in the beginning. I know you might love your Gonstead and your Thompson and your full spine and your other kind of things. Great, those are all amazing techniques. But in the beginning, let me just ask you, that audible crunch, is that predictable? No. So what happens to these kiddos sometimes, even if you explain, this is what might happen, all right? But you get a minimally speaking kiddo, and you go crunch on this kiddo, and you've explained everything you could, show them the spine, and show them the mouth, all that kind of stuff, and they hear that, and wah, right? And they go into an overwhelm, because that was completely unpredictable. Now, that doesn't mean you can never adjust a kiddo like that ever and use those techniques, but it's so important to start off here with sustained contact, or whatever you guys call it if you're from other schools, and then slowly work your way up to that sort of adjustment, than to start at this top rung adjustment, right? That top rung adjustment is too unpredictable for these kiddos. It's all about managing prediction errors, and in autism, that's very challenging. So, I have a lot of videos, but we're just not going to play this. The reason I'm showing you this is because a lot of these kiddos, why do you think she's doing this? And what she's doing in this particular brief video, she's doing this. Why she's doing this? Well, it's to self-soothe, but why is she putting stuff by her eyes? What would be the purpose? It's to actually block stuff out. She's doing this to block stuff out. And I have a lot of kiddos when I first meet them. Here's an example. There's one kiddo that I'm seeing. He's this was him during the new patient exam. And what's amazing is, and this shows their amazing intent when they want to do something, is he's able, with the phone like this and his finger over here, he was able to change the Paw Patrol video in a 3-second increment over and over and over again. To say, so the Sky is saying to whatever the next character is, to Marshall, like, I need your help, I need your help, I need your help, I need your help. And unbelievable. From here, I need your help, I need your help, I need your help. It was unbelievable that these specifics. However, when I asked this child to point to a letter, they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. So they can point, they can get so specific with the YouTube thing because they are thinking about doing it. But when I ask them to do it, they have a hard time with it. Because this is like here, where am I? I'm back in that prediction thing. I can predict. But here I'm holding up an alphabet chart. They can't predict that. So getting them to volitionally move their hand from here to here because I told them to is much harder than doing it because they want to do it themselves. So that's what's happening. You're blocking out the world. Oh, it worked. Hold on. Okay. Yeah. It worked this time. Oh. So bring it all together. How to have an interoception-aware, predictive-aware practice. So kids with autism have challenges with interoception and prediction, as we said. We have to teach kids internal body awareness. So you need to, if you have some of these kiddos in your practices, you need to give them some home exercises to help build interoceptive awareness. Some of my favorite exercises are the heartbeat challenge. A lot of these kids do not realize that they have a heartbeat inside. So you have to teach them that. Put your hand over here. You feel that? Can you feel that? You feel that? Oops. Uh-oh. Hold on. Sorry. I'm having technical difficulties. Please stand by. So that's a great thing to do, is to teach them the heartbeat challenge. To teach them belly breathing. I put my hand like this on my belly. I said, watch this. Watch when I take a breath in. You see when I take a breath in and my belly goes out? And I take a breath out and my belly goes in? You do that. You do that. And I teach the parents to do it with their kiddo. Because it builds like respiratory awareness. You have heartbeat awareness, respiratory awareness, primitive reflexes. A lot of times these kids will have positive primitive reflexes. So when you do the primitive reflex exercises with them, they start to get awareness, right? So as an example, if they have a positive palmar grasp, so you go like this on there, and they grasp their hand like this, so their fingers move like this, you start doing a paintbrush on their hand over and over and over again, they start now getting awareness in here, and now their hands can start to relax, because a lot of these kids, their hands are so stiff. We just had a kiddo yesterday, came in, a young child with very severe cerebral palsy, not walking, not talking, 6 years old. This one of her hands is like this, like crunched like this from her cerebral palsy, and nobody has been working on the palmar grasp. And I said to the mom, I said, has anybody ever worked on her hands? And they know the key thing that they're trying to do is trying to get her to walk. I'm like, that's very important, but you got to get her hands to relax. And I tried to put my finger in her hand like this, and I couldn't get it out because it is so stuck. So her little brain, her and her body, she's 6 years old chronologically, but neurologically, she's like a 3-month-old. Neurologically, because that's by a 3 or 4-month-old, you should start to have palmar release and open up your hands, right? And that's the kind of stuff that we need to work on with these kiddos. So primitive reflex work is super important. We need to create a safe, trusted, reliable, predictable environment in your office and teach this to parents too. And a lot of this is like some polyvagal, some polyvagal theory concepts. How many guys are familiar with the polyvagal theory? Oh, okay. So I gave you 2 books to read already, right? I'm going to give you another book to read. You got to read the polyvagal theory by Dr. Stephen Porges. If you're going to see kids on the spectrum, you got to know this information. In a nutshell, like I mentioned before, the whole concept of polyvagal theory is that the vagus nerve does more than just rest and digest. It's also about social engagement. And the way, as I mentioned earlier, we socially engage is through this safety radar. It's like, is this safe? Is this safe? Is this safe? So you want to create an environment where they walk in and they feel safe. And you want to create a predictable environment so that when they walk in and they feel safe, they also know that when they go into the room, we have quiet rooms for them, by the way. So we have open adjusted. We have 4 benches out in the open for our neurotypical patients and our adults and stuff. But for these kiddos, we have a quiet room in the back. It's a sensory deficient room. There's nothing in there. I have air filter that is also like a sound machine, making this like noise that blocks out all the other noise that's going on, the chaos that's going on, up front. And there's nothing else in that room that makes any kind of noise. There's no sense. If you guys have sense, like you love putting like Young Life, essential oils and all that kind of stuff, forget it. That stuff is done because those scents, as lovely as they are to you and me and some people, to these kiddos, it is like very, very, it's like a sense of danger. So we have to learn these polyvagal concepts. At another time, I could talk more about that. We have to create predictable adjustments, like I just mentioned. Do re-exams in the same room if possible as they are adjusted in, so that we create everything is predictable. And I will tell you, sometimes doing re-exams are hard because they come in and they lie face down, right? Because they're ready for it. But before we're doing this, remember the first time you're here, we did some tickles and stuff, right? So it's not easy to get them to do the re-exams, but it's a very important thing. And you know why it's really important? Because the parents need to see it. Now, you need to see it too, of course, because you want to change things and adapt things. But the parents need to see the changes. Because a lot of times you get a kiddo, like that one, I told you that boy who's sitting there like this, right? So after 5 visits, the parents are like, I don't see any changes. I'm like, that's okay, let my exam do the talking. And now we're seeing that instead of, like before he had 0 tracking, now he can track a little bit. Before, all his reflexes were positive, like +2s, 3s, and 4s. Now they're positive, like +1s, right? So before he couldn't stand on the balance board, now he can stand on the balance board. I'm like, look at all the great changes. And then 15 minutes, 20 minutes later after the re-exam, the mom's like, wow, well, look at the amazing changes that are happening, right? So we just, in 15, 20 minutes, we changed her opinion about what's going on with their kiddo from, I don't see any changes to, I see great changes. But you've got to show them by the numbers. You've got to show them by the numbers. Don't just say, how are you feeling today? Stop asking that question. That question doesn't work with these kiddos. It's not how you're feeling, it's how's their brain healing. That's the question. And you don't know that, like the mom won't know that. You got to ask, you have to do your tests, right? You did your tests when you first met them, then you do your test 5 visits later, then you do your test another 5 or 10 visits later, and this is how you show progress. Numbers getting better. Look, we started here, now we're here, now we're here. Look at the improvements. Look at the improvements. And find the stuff the kids like, allow them to repeat it. So I get this one kiddo, I just saw him yesterday, he's so cute. He's like, hi, Dr. Rubin, I just saw a trash truck. Now, he's told me this 20 times, right? He said, have you seen the trash truck? Did you see the trash truck? I said, yeah, I saw a trash truck. I haven't seen a trash truck today, but who cares, right? You don't be so literal, right? Right? Somebody like, no, I haven't seen a trash truck. And I see the parents too. Sometimes the parents will argue with their kids and say, there's no trash truck here. Why argue? Let's go look for one. That's a better thing. Yeah, let's look for one. Right? Don't argue. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Tell me about the trash truck. What was on the trash truck? You know, was it a big trash truck or a little trash truck? You just get engaged with it. Exactly. It's the same thing like my dad had Alzheimer's. He passed away from Alzheimer's a number of years ago. And my mom would call me up. My dad would call me up and say, there's a strange woman in the house cooking for me. Can you figure this out? Yeah, and I laugh now, right? But back then, in the beginning, I'm like, Dad, it's wrong, right? And after a while, I realized that I wasn't getting anywhere. I said, you know what, Dad? I'll take care of it. Put her on the phone. Right? And he said, oh, okay, thank you. I feel better. Right? So why argue? Right? Just play along with it. We have another kiddo, fans. Is all the kid talks about is fans. And I have this fan in this one room that he goes into. And somehow, I don't know how he figured it or knew this, it's called a mainstay. This is a mainstay fan. Right? There's the way the blades are different things, and he knows all the different blades and what they mean. So he's like, do you know you have a mainstay fan? And he's asked me this 20 times. Wow, really? What's the difference between a mainstay fan and a fan? Well, the mainstay fan has 3 blades, and they do this. Okay, great. So get excited about the conversation. If they love you, who cares what they talk about? Right? Like, and the mom says when we pull up to this guy, they pull up to my office, he's like, yeah, right? Now, I want them to be excited because they know that we're going to pour love on these kids, right? You don't want them saying, I don't want to go, I don't know, I don't want to go, I don't want to go, I don't want to go, right? And then you know how much does a child weigh when they don't want to do something, right? They can go, right? And they could just glue themselves into the car seat, and then they're unmovable, right? So you don't want that to happen. You want them to be totally excited about going into your office. So in the first few visits, here is my recommendation to you guys, is your goal isn't to do the job. Your goal is, I'm going to move a phone, right? That's not your goal. I love moving bones. I love chiropractic. I love whether you use an activator or use your hands or whatever thing. That's important stuff. But that's not the goal in the beginning. Your goal is to establish safety and trust. That is your goal. This little kiddo, nonverbal child on the autism spectrum, he didn't say any words whatsoever. This is where he wanted to get adjusted. This is the sustained contact adjustments as an example that I was doing with this kiddo for the first 6 weeks, until his first re-exam. Right after his first re-exam, he sat down right here and he put up a truck like this, because on this little, circle thing, and he said, "Blue truck." And we're like, "What?" "Blue truck." And he picked another one, "Red truck." And now he's in school, no longer with a spectrum diagnosis, totally mainstream. Totally mainstream, right? Now this is not, just let's be honest, this is not every kid, right? I wish it was. I wish it was. But I'm just telling you the possibilities, and the reason I'm mentioning this to you, one case to you specifically, is because I adjusted him where he wanted to be. I did sustained contact for the first 6 weeks. So, and people would look at that and say, "You were hardly adjusting him." According to whom? Right? People say, "Well, if you're not moving a bone, you're not adjusting." Where is that written? Did BJ ever say that? No. Now, he might have been a bit more aggressive in his adjustments, but he never said, if you don't hear noise, it's not an adjustment. Right? So we have to understand that there are a variety of different sorts of adjustments that we can use, and we want to use the adjustment that's appropriate for the nerve system. Not your office protocol, but that child's nerve system at that visit. Because let's say yesterday that we had a kiddo who usually I do much more gentle full spine adjustments on, and this girl yesterday, she's a little baby, but this girl yesterday was hysterical. She had a shot the other day and she wasn't feeling well, blah, blah. So I could not do my typical adjustments on her. So her nerve system was different. Her nerve system was different. I'm going to change what I do. I'm not going to do what I did 3 days ago when I saw her. Yet again, today, if this girl's nerve system is right, you're making your adjustment based upon the nerve system. That's using polyvagal principles with your adjustment. So another great author who is a good friend of Dr. Porsche's is Dr. Deb Dana, and this is the social engagement, or this is, I should say, the vagal ladder, the polyvagal ladder. So here on the bottom is when the child is stuck in dorsal vagus. Here is when they're stuck in sympathetics, and here is where is ventral vagus. And you want to adjust that child based upon where they are on this ladder. So a child who's here at the top of the ladder, you're not going to adjust them the same as a kid who's here on the bottom of the ladder. And that's important to understand, is that we're varying our adjustments based upon what's happening with that particular child. If we see the child high on the ladder, we can do one thing. If we see a child lower on the ladder, we'll do something else. We want to tailor it based upon what we're seeing. And one of the ways for you easily to measure their vagus nerve is to get this simple app called HeartMath, on your phones. So the app is actually called Inner Balance, but the device is called HeartMath. And what happens is this little device clips into their ear off of your phones or an iPad if you want to use an iPad. And you can measure what's going on with their vagus nerve. So for instance, here on the left, you can see this kid, when I first put it on, he was green is good, blue is stress, and red is extreme stress. He dropped down from green to red within the first 35 seconds or so, and he started getting really agitated because we pulled the thing off of him. Now, this is a different child here. We just had a re-exam on him. His first visit was similar to this, and now he's mostly in the green. So once again, the numbers. We're showing the parents the numbers. And here's the thing. When you do HeartMath, you have the kids sitting doing nothing for a minute. So you can very easily measure and say, look, I didn't talk to the kid. I didn't do anything with the kid. He just sat there for a minute. And in 1 minute's time, he plummeted like this. Or 1 minute's time, he went up like this. This is great. And let's say this is the same person. You say, see, this is where we started. This is where we are now. That's huge. That means their vagus nerve is coming online. Because one of the biggest things that these kids have is the dysregulation of the vagus nerve. And how do we get to the vagus nerve? Is through the belly breathing and the heartbeat awareness, like that, but through cranial adjusting and upper cervical adjusting. So all these things, we put all these factors into this, and now we can see the changes. We can see the beautiful changes like this in their vagus nerve. These are a whole different, I have this link for you. This is a whole different bunch of interoception exercises. If you want to take a picture of this, and you can maybe see the link. It's kind of smaller than I thought it would be. But this is some great interoception exercises. This is the body perception questionnaire that Dr. Porches came up with, that you can ask them to fill out on behalf of their kiddos to see what's going on with them. This is the interoception sensory questionnaire that came out of this book. This is a great book that talks a lot about interoception. So you can kind of see where kids are on their interoception paths or on their predictive paths. This is one of my favorite pictures that I love showing because this shows the polyvagal theory in action. And this shows prediction changing. Here's a child who is one of the worst, had autism level 4, and one of the most significantly affected kiddos I've ever seen on the spectrum. Because not only did she have difficulty, she was zero communication, but she also had zero eye contact. She looked at nobody except her mom and her older sister, and she walked like this because her interoception was so off that she couldn't even feel the bottom of her feet. So interoception, proprioception, totally miscued. She had to walk with like her mom and her older sister like this, in order for her to walk into the office. So she's sitting down here. She would never go into the back. This is where we did our exams. We did everything. This is her chair. Fine, you want to sit there? That's totally fine. After about 6 or 7 adjustments, the mom took this picture. She said she has never done anything like this before. Where she, first off, what is she doing with her eyes? She's looking in my eyes. Right? And she's touching me. She's touching me because she's probably saying, like, what is this crazy stuff on his face? Right? So imagine someone who is completely, like, inside, like, remember you saw the fight, flight, freeze? Completely in the freeze state, and now coming out and saying, I see you. I see you. Right? And it's because we made a predictive environment that we adjusted her, and what am I doing here? Bioenergetic synchronization here. And we're calming her nerve system down and getting her vagus kind of put back up together again. And this is how we make changes in these kiddos on the spectrum. And here's the belly breathing exercise, where one of my favorite ways to do this with littler kiddos and kiddos on the spectrum is to put like a rubber ducky on their belly like this. Can you make the duck go up? So you're lying on your back, make the duck go up. Right? That's how you know you're doing it, because you're making the duck go up. Another predictable adjustment. So here's a kiddo who, if he did not want to do something, what he would do would be he would throw himself face down on the ground. But he's not a small child, right? So the first time I met him, he had blood all over his face like this because in the parking lot, he threw himself down because he didn't want to come into another doctor's office, right? Not an unusual thing. Adjusting him, by the first re-exam, guess what? Mom says, that's not happening anymore. He's not throwing himself down on the ground anymore. Now he's still minimally speaking, but now she doesn't have to worry about him like giving himself concussion every other day. Right? This is the proprioceptive, interoceptive, predictive awareness that we're trying to instill in these kiddos. So you may know this or maybe no, but Dr. Schill said I could talk about this. I have a podcast, in case you weren't aware, it's called Caracast. It's been out since 2015 or 2016 or something. One of the longest running podcasts in chiropractic. So I'd love to hear what you think about it. So please let me know, because it's been a lot of fun doing it, and I post things like this and post other things. So they're between 10 minutes and an hour long. So let me know what you think. And ultimately, ultimately, our job is to protect our kiddos' futures, right? So we need to adjust more kiddos, and I'm telling you, like when I was a child, the autism rate was 1 in 10,000. What is it now? 1 in 31. 1 in 31. So if you are not seeing a lot of kiddos on the spectrum, you're going to. Expect more and more and more of these kiddos to be coming into your offices. And I have a lot of, it has been my great fortune to study with people like Dr. Larry Webster, to study with Dr. Robert Malillo, the chiropractor, functional neurologist, who have taught me so much about pediatrics. Dr. Jeannie Ohm, who taught me so much about pediatrics. And my goal is to try to disseminate some of the stuff that I have learned and put it into your heads so that you can go into your communities and be that go-to person in the community for when someone says, who should I go see in my community with a kiddo on the spectrum? It's Dr. Page. That's what we want. We want people to say, that's the person to go to. You got a kiddo on the spectrum, that's the person to go to. Thank you guys so much.